Hi, friends. I hope you're all okay. Uh, I'm, of course, Leroy Liebling. This is my next YouTube video. Let me emphasize to you that I'm a romantic, and among my romances are certain accents and, furthermore, dialects that I personally have found a high grade of beauty in. I have worked for a home warranty company for many years, and during those figuratively by now countless hours that I spent as a call specialist claims resolution department representative, I discovered that my second most favorite American Southern accent turned out to be the Arkansas accent, but that my actual top favorite American Southern accent, which I opine is actually more like a dialect, definitely turned out to be none other than not exactly your average Mississippi Southern accent, but I think in reality a certain highly unique Mississippi Southern dialect that's quite rare from what I gather. Anyways, because of the fact that, at least as I see it, if one produces one's YouTube videos in a way that, in a way that entertains even one's own self, or at least one's own self more, then it's quite possible that one will begin loving one's YouTube video producing all the more while one is at it. I am well aware that the rock and roll and a folk music legend Bob Dylan was actually from Minnesota. However, the particular Mississippi dialect or accent that I so adore does have, I think, a certain similarity to Dylan's particular voice or manner of speaking, or both, I would say. Yes, I do know in anticipation that there shall probably be some who might speculate that I'm strategically creating or trying to strategically create a certain convenient persona. They will be quite awfully wrong about that, though, and I certainly know that that's the case. And the latter is not just what truly matters to me, but it's also what would matter in an ultimate divine trial of me. Moving forward, regarding the less personal aspects of this discourse now, I'm hereby christening that so beloved particular Mississippi State American English dialect that I, as an amateur linguist, love so much as Halian Mississippian, which can always, as far as I myself am concerned, be standardly shortened to Hal Mississippian. Or better still, Hal Mississippian. Hal Mississippian. That's HALMISSI, one single P after that I, and then an IAN. Hal Mississippian. And an introduction to the Hal Mississippian dialect, as I consider it, is what this particular YouTube video production of mine is really all about. What follows is an out loud reading by me in as well as I can attempt, because I'm trying to perfect, my own, execution or carrying out of that particular rare dialect. What follows is an out loud reading attempt by me in that particular beloved Mississippi dialect of mine that I've hereby christened Hal Mississippian. Specifically of the Wikipedia article on Mississippi, the U.S. state, as that article is available on this month of May of 2022. Now, as for the understandably potential question, do I intend to produce more YouTube videos speaking in Hal Mississippian? The answer is, oh, definitely. Where there is a question mark now, though, is on the matter of whether or not I might take to utilizing Hal Mississippian standardly throughout all or at least throughout most of my yet to come near future YouTube videos and beyond. The fact is that I'm really not absolutely certain about that yet. I mean, your guess is as good as mine there at this time. Oh, and as for another rather interesting question, the question when, if I actually do recall it, was probably the very first time that I ever heard Hal Mississippian spoken, or at least an American English Southern accent or dialect that at least I would deem quite close enough, that is, to Hal Mississippian. I do recall the first time I ever in this life heard something like it, or even it, that was in the movie Smokey and the Bandit Part 2. There's a particular scene in that movie starring Burt Reynolds, rest in peace, and Sally Field, in which Reynolds' character, the bandit, as he was called, also, by the way, accused in the movie of being a show-off himself, stops at a gas station to fill his vehicle's tank with diesel fuel, and there's a gas station tenant sitting there who answers to the bandit with the line, "If I had any more diesel fuel, I'd have joined that OPEC," followed by the line, "If you want any." That was probably the very first time that I had ever really heard anything truly like Hal Mississippian. No, wait a minute. Good old Bugs Bunny was big on Hal Mississippian. Oh, yeah. There's a certain cartoon episode of Bugs Bunny in which he's singing, and he one of the lyrics that he uses is promenade, and he does use that unusual accent or dialect in on other occasions, as I do recall, in a number of other episodes, quite many episodes, Bugs Bunny. Anyway, but anyhow, here now is my very first publicized reading in the Hal Mississippian dialect. Well, it's my attempt at it for the first time, and bear in mind I am trying to perfect it, and I do intend to continue, trying to perfect it. I'm gonna give us some background music with, of all things, a singer who certainly had in my opinion, a southern accent, a southern draw, right? In her song, and possibly all the rest of her speech in her regular day-to-day life. I'm talking about Miss Nancy Sinatra, and the song I'm talking about is "These Boots Are Made for Walking." And so let me just pull up that song right now. Okay. Pulling it up in a moment. Okay, clicking on it as background music, and it'll serve as a sort of rhythm, because bear in mind, you might notice that the particular accent or dialect, that I've identified, Halian Mississippian, or as it can be shortened as Hal Mississippian. Okay. It does seem to have a sort of melodic beauty to it that very much appeals to me, as also does its frequent emphasis on the U vocal, the U vowel, I would say. You might notice it as I read the article. But we begin now with Nancy Sinatra giving us some background music and beat to actually assist me on, being as rhythmic as possible, because it is a sort of rhythmic dialect, as you'll notice. Mississippi is a state in the southeastern region of the United States, bordered to the north by Tennessee, to the east by Alabama, to the south by the Gulf of Mexico, to the southwest by Louisiana, and to the northwest by Arkansas. Mississippi's western boundary is largely defined by the Mississippi River. Mississippi is the 32nd largest and 35th most populous of the 50 U.S. states. Jackson is both the state's capital and largest city. Greater Jackson is the state's most populous metropolitan area with a population of 591,978 in 2020. On December 10, 1817, Mississippi became the 20th state admitted to the Union. By 1860, Mississippi was the nation's top cotton producing state, and slaves accounted for 55% of the state population. Mississippi declared its secession from the Union on January 9, 1861, and was one of the 7 original Confederate states, which constituted the largest slaveholding states in the nation. Following the Civil War, it was restored to the Union on February 23, 1870. Until the Great Migration of the 1930s, African Americans were a majority of Mississippi's population. In 2010, 37.3% of Mississippi's population was African American, the highest percentage of any state. Mississippi was the site of many prominent events during the civil rights movement, including the Ole Miss riot of 1962 by white students objecting to desegregation, the 1963 assassination of Medgar Evers, and the 1964 Freedom Summer murders of 3 activists working on voting rights. Mississippi frequently ranks low among U.S. states in measures of health, education, and development, while ranking high in measures of poverty. The adage, "Thank God for Mississippi," became popular due to these rankings and is often said by natives of other low-ranking U.S. states, as Mississippi's extremely low ranking usually spares those states from last place state ranking. Mississippi is almost entirely within the Gulf coastal plain and generally consists of lowland plains and low hills. The northwest remainder of the state consists of the Mississippi Delta, a section of the Mississippi alluvial plain. Mississippi's highest point is Woodall Mountain at 807 feet, 246 meters above sea level, adjacent to the Cumberland Plateau. The lowest is the Gulf of Mexico. Mississippi has a humid subtropical climatic classification. Etymology. The state's name is derived from the Mississippi River, which flows along and defines its western boundary. European American settlers named it after the Ojibwe word. English, Great River. History. Near 10,000 BC, Native Americans or Paleo-Indians arrived in what today is referred to as the American South. Paleo-Indians in the South were hunter-gatherers who pursued the megafauna that became extinct following the end of the Pleistocene Age. In the Mississippi Delta, Native American settlements and agricultural fields were developed on the natural levees, higher ground in the proximity of rivers. The Native Americans developed extensive fields near their permanent villages. Together with other practices, they created some localized deforestation, but did not alter the ecology of the Mississippi Delta as a whole. After thousands of years, succeeding cultures of the woodland and Mississippian culture eras developed rich and complex agricultural societies in which surplus supported the development of specialized trades. Both were mound builder cultures. Those of the Mississippian culture were the largest and most complex, constructed beginning about 950 AD. The peoples had a trading network spanning the continent from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. Their large earthworks, which expressed their cosmology of political and religious concepts, still stand throughout the Mississippi and Ohio River valleys. Descendant Native American tribes of the Mississippian culture in the southeast include the Chickasaw and Choctaw. Other tribes who inhabited the territory of Mississippi and whose names were honored by colonists and local towns include the Nashe, the Yazoo, and the Biloxi. The first major European expedition into the territory that became Mississippi was that of the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto, who passed through the northeastern part of the state in 1540 in his second expedition to the New World. Colonial era. In April 1699, French colonists established the first European settlement at Fort Maurepas, also known as Old Biloxi, built in the vicinity of present-day Ocean Springs on the Gulf Coast. It was settled by Pierre Lemoine d'Iberville. In 1716, the French founded Nashe on the Mississippi River as Fort Rosalie. It became the dominant town and trading post of the area. The French called the greater territory New France. The Spanish continued to claim part of the Gulf Coast area east of Mobile Bay of present-day southern Alabama, in addition to the entire area of present-day Florida. The British assumed control of the French territory after the French and Indian War. During the colonial era, European settlers imported enslaved Africans to work on cash crop plantations. Under French and Spanish rule, there developed a class of free people of color, gens de couleur libre, mostly multi-racial descendants of European men and enslaved or free black women, and their mixed-race children. In the early days, the French and Spanish colonists were chiefly men. Even as more European women joined the settlements, the men had interracial unions among women of African descent and increasingly multiracial descent, both before and after marriages to European women. Often the European men would help their multiracial children get educated or gain apprenticeships for trades, and sometimes they settled property on them. They often freed the mothers and their children, if enslaved, as part of contracts of plaçage. With this social capital, the free people of color became artisans, and sometimes educated merchants and property owners, forming a third class between the Europeans and most enslaved Africans in the French and Spanish settlements, although not so large a free community as in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana. I stop it there. So thank you so much for listening to my very first practice run, publicized, of the dialect that I have christened Halian Mississippian. Others may call it something else, but I've identified it like so. Thank you so much for listening. This is Leroy Liebling, and I'll get back to you soon. Have a good rest of the evening and a great week. Thank you.